If your renovation is delayed or you're worried that it's going to be, then this is exactly why that happens. There are actually plenty of reasons, but most of them can be pretty easily avoided. Even if they can't be, there's some things you can be doing, even if your renovation is delayed. So, the very first reason that renovations get delayed is because people don't have their permissions ready before they get started on site. So, these are things like planning permission, permitted development, and building control sign off. Now, those are really essential things because those are the kind of things that if you haven't got them prepared, they are literally going to hold up your project for not just weeks, but for months. So it's really important you have those pieces of paper signed off before you get started on site. Now, I would say that it's not totally avoidable. My renovation right now it's not delayed, it's just kind of going slow because we discovered some things on site that we didn't know about until we started excavating, which has meant we've got to go back to building control. And that is kind of delaying things a bit because building control can be frustratingly slow. So, one thing I would suggest as some advice here is that if timing is an issue to you, you might want to consider going down the path of private building control. Now, private building control, you pay a little bit extra generally, in my experience, but you've got a much quicker response rate when it comes to getting new structural calculations and things like that signed off. So, it could really be worth your while. So, that is just something to think about. But overall, you want to make sure that you've got all your permissions and everything signed off by the council before you start on site. So, the second thing that delays projects is actually quite a major thing. And quite interestingly, this is not something that is anything to do with a builder. It's not something that's anything to do with the council or anyone external at all. In fact, this is a way that the homeowner themselves can really, really delay a renovation project. And I see it all the time. And what it is it's people are not ready with their fixtures, fittings, and materials decisions. What a lot of people don't realize is going into a renovation is that you're going to have literally hundreds of decisions to make. You know, you're going to have to think about tiles, taps, door handles, door stops, all the little things that you probably didn't consider. And if you're not ready for those things, if they're not on site and delivered, ready for your builder won't be able to continue. So it's a really important to be very organized and very strict with your decision making. And just be aware of just how many decisions are going to be coming your way. So the next thing that delays renovation projects is also something else that is to do with homeowners. And that is all around changing your mind. So hopefully before you've started your project, you've signed off a set of plans and you're all aligned. What I see all the time though is that a lot of people don't really understand their plans or are not really committed to their plans. And so it's only when the build starts to develop and they start to see certain walls coming down here or things actually being built up that they start to go, oh, I wasn't really aware that we were doing that. And they want to pause things and rethink and just costs a lot of time on a renovation project. But also importantly, it costs a lot of money because time is money, but also some things have to then get undone. So my advice on that is to really, really understand what you're committing to and what you're planning to build before you start and make sure that you're really happy with that. So do not build until you're fully happy to commit to your plans. So the next issue which can delay a renovation project is also related to drawings, and it's basically not having enough detail in the drawings. So it might be fine to say to a builder, this is the shape of the rooms we want, but that is nowhere near enough. What they're going to need is they're going to need electrical layouts, they're going to need plumbing design, they're going to need joinery. So make sure that all of that detail has been thought through before you start to build. Because once the build starts, you'll be really surprised just how quickly they need that kind of information. The next thing that's going to delay your renovation are just general problems that arise on site. I always tell my clients problems will occur. Don't expect that they won't. You're going to discover things you didn't know about the house because you're only going to find out about those things once walls come down or floors are dug up. Houses have got their funny little quirks. But the question is, how are you going to deal with those problems? And are those problems going to spiral into something much larger? Or are they going to be handled in a kind of timely and calm manner? So this one's really all about keeping your head, staying positive, using this opportunity to really build communication and build relationships with your team. I would say there's often not a lot of point in assigning blame. It's much more about, okay, this is the situation we've got now. Let's all put our heads together, let's get creative, and let's be positive about how we move forward and find a solution. So another thing that can delay a renovation is really related to not understanding lead times and supplier issues. And I would always say here that it's very important that when you're ordering certain things, you understand roughly how long things take to be delivered. So there's a whole lot of things, and I love these things. They're things that you can get next day. They're fantastic. You know, a lot of bathroom equipment you can get next day, but a lot of things, you know, kitchens, windows, certain specialist tiles, things like that, they can literally take months to get delivered. So you really have to understand when you're deciding on the items that you want to be in your renovation, it's like, at what point do you need to be ordering those so that they arrive on site not too early because they'll just get in the way, not too late because obviously that will delay, but just at the right time. And you know, it can be quite difficult to put all that together. So organization, planning, and just making sure that you think about that up front is really important. I would also say here, it's worth just factoring in a margin of error. You will be surprised at the number of times that things get sent and they're wrong or they're damaged and they need to go back and you need to do the process all over again. So do factor that in right from the beginning and give yourself that margin of error. The next reason that I've seen renovations get delayed is budget or cash flow issues. Now, hopefully you'll be starting your renovation knowing how much it's going to cost. So that will include that you've had a really detailed costing from your builder with understanding which items are a definite cost and which ones are just provisional sums and which are things that might go up or down depending on your final choices. But also that you've baked in a margin of error, a contingency fund. Because as I said before, problems will occur. And the problem with problems is that problems normally have a cost associated to them. So if you've got a contingency fund set aside for that kind of thing, it's definitely going to soften the blow when things happen. It's not going to derail you as much as it could. Because what you don't want to happen is you don't want there to be a problem and then that halts the project because you can't afford to fix the problem. So do be aware that you're going to just need that extra amount of money just sitting aside, just so when those things happen, you can keep the project moving with momentum. The next thing that can be tricky when it comes to scheduling a renovation is the availability of trades. People like plumbers, electricians, plasterers, joiners, these people are in huge demand. It's really, really hard to get them and it's hard to pin them down. So you're lucky if you've got a contractor who is going to be doing that for you and coordinating the trades. Obviously, they're going to charge a bit more for that because it's quite a lot of work. But if you're doing it yourself, just don't assume that you can phone up those people and that they're going to be available the next day, because they are probably dealing with lots of different projects that they're going in between and everything's changing and everything has a knock-on effect. So just be aware that you're not necessarily going to be able to just demand at what point they're going to show up on your project. Another thing to note with this is everything is very interrelated. So you have a delay from one person and that's going to have a knock-on delay for other people. So on a renovation project, scheduling is just such a fluid thing. It's constantly changing. If one person's even like half a day late, then that's going to impact what can happen the next day. You have to stay very flexible and you have to stay very, very organized and in communication with everybody that's on the team. Another thing that can actually impact your renovation is the lovely British weather. If you're building in winter, you're having to deal with rain, snow, and all sorts of other conditions. So obviously that can halt what can happen on site at certain times. So just be aware that that can happen, and it is definitely worth thinking about if you're planning your renovation during the winter months. Those are the main things that, in my experience, I've seen delaying a renovation. And the big issue when your renovation is delayed, and the thing that you really, really want to avoid, is losing your builder. Now, a lot of people kind of get worried about builders doing multiple jobs at one time, and that's actually not really the issue. The issue is that your builder needs to keep building in order to make a living. So he will generally get paid by the actual work that he's completed. Now, if he can't complete that work on your site, he's going to need to make a living somehow. So he's going to have to go to another job. And once you've lost his attention and he is then distracted by another job, it's much, much harder to get him back on site. So the thing that's really, really essential is that you don't lose your builder off-site into another project. So do everything that you can, and there is plenty you can do, as I've previously explained, to make sure that you're doing your bit to keep your builder engaged in your project. So what can you do when delays do occur? I would say make good use of that time. What you can be doing is you can be researching things that you might need later in the project. You can be creating shortlists. So when the time comes to buy things, you've got a pre-prepared shortlist of things that previously researched, and you're going, those are the things I'm going to choose from. You can be collecting samples, and you can just be generally organized. The other thing I would say when building work might have stopped is to just stay calm. It doesn't really add anything if you start to sort of spiral and get negative about things. Just remember that you're on a renovation site, and stuff's going to happen. When problems happen on site, it's a really, really good time to protect relationships and also actually to build relationships. It's really easy to get along with people when everything's going well. But when things are not going so well, this is a time where you can really show up and make a difference to the project. You can build your relationships, and you can really create a great sense of camaraderie on site. Any blame or negativity at this point can really, really slow things down even further. You want to keep people engaged. You want to keep them positive. You want to keep them seeking solutions rather than just abandoning site. And generally, we all know as human beings, if someone's being negative towards us, if we're feeling blamed or put upon, we actually want to retreat from that situation. So you don't want your contractors, your builder, you don't want anyone involved in your project retreating and just going, oh, I don't want to phone up, or I don't want to turn up because there's just too much bad feeling and somebody might tell me off. So as much as you can, stay positive, stay encouraging, and really work with your team to seek solutions. This is also a really good time to keep perspective. When something negative happens, and I think this is true in life generally, it's really, really easy to just focus in on that thing that's gone wrong and to really become very, very critical and just to lose sight of everything else. And what I would say is if something's gone wrong, try to do the opposite. I would step back and look at the bigger picture. Remind yourself why you're doing the renovation. Remind yourself of the end vision and what you're hoping to gain from the whole thing. Look at all the great things that are going well, because I guarantee there'll be a lot more things that are going well than things that are going negatively. And I would just say keep perspective, because that will really ground you in this situation, and it will really help you to move forward and to have good relationships with the people around you, and that will be critical. And finally, I would say when problems happen and delays happen, it's actually a brilliant time to get creative. You never know that this issue that's come up may actually lead you to a better solution. That's happened to me so many times on building sites. A problem's happened, and instead of just getting negative about it, we've thought about, okay, so maybe there's a better solution that will get around the problem. And this is why a great creative builder is one of the most incredible things you can have on a building site, because they can come up with technical solutions to problems, and it is just worth its weight in gold. So any builder that is going to engage creatively is so worth having. So there you have it. There are the top ways that renovations get delayed, what you can do to avoid that delay, and the things that you can do when delays do inevitably happen. So I really hope that your renovation's going well and that you're managing to navigate through it with all the complexities and the joy of renovation. And as always, wishing you every success with your renovation.